Happy Saturday. Hope you're doing great today. Today I want to come on here for kind of like a day 3 of engaging some of the comments, some of the questions, some of the feedback I am getting to the videos that I have made over the last couple days centering around an event that occurred at the lodge where an individual stole a bike from someone on Main Street, took the bike into the lodge, and the lodge responded. Neighbors responded. There was a response. The Neighborhood Works just released a statement on exactly what happened, how it was handled, etc. So there are more details coming to light on that. I'm not here to specifically talk about the incident, but a lot of people are saying, Mark, you are a board member of Neighborhood Works, and it's time to hold you accountable. So I'm up for that, whatever that means. I suppose that means asking me questions. I suppose that means asking about procedures around the lodge. And of course, the better source for that is the executive director, the staff of the lodge, the management of the lodge. I wasn't there that day, that kind of thing. I'm a board member. I'm a member on a team, but collectively, we make decisions and direct best practice and policies and things like that. So that's fine. Again, the lodge has issued a statement on that. What I want to do today is talk to you as your mayoral candidate once again and say, hey, I wish that I could be posting today, more happier goals and dreams, mayoral things about, recreational programs, the need to build out community programs for our seniors and our families, and how wonderful things are like the path and the need for good sidewalks and transportation, and that is all the kind of stuff that I want to tackle as your mayor. I run on the path every day in the winter. Would I love to see that? A 12-month-a-year path? Absolutely. As a member of the Rotary Club, I'm participating in the lighting of the path, which is safety issues, beautification of the town. I love all that. But right now, there is something that is a major topic of conversation and concern in our municipality, and it is the homelessness crisis, the incidents like the one that happened a few days ago. And again, as your mayor, I don't want to continue to propagate what has been happening for 2 years, that we continue to live in an emergency situation, the lodge as an emergency response to the homelessness crisis, and just kind of say, I'm not going to touch that political hot potato. A lot of people have said to me, Mark, you'll never get elected as mayor in this town because of your connections to Neighborhood Works. And again, so be it. I'm putting my name out as a choice there, okay? But I'm never going to compromise on building wealth in our community for all of us, business owners, residents. We need to keep building our wealth. And I've talked about that. Pipes, pavement, policing, right? I've spent, this is day 62 of coming on here every day. But when I do come on here every day, that means talking about, hey, if there's a crisis happening, that needs to be addressed head on. Isn't it interesting? Some people say, Mark, people are going to perceive you as you're just a one-issue candidate. You're just a homelessness crisis guy. Well, isn't it interesting though, if that is the only major crisis facing our community that most people are talking about, it's so inflammatory, how could I not talk about it? How could I put my head in the sand and just talk about recreational activities and the need for really nice sidewalks and accessibility? That's all true, and it's both and. But at this time, we have to turn our focus and say, this needs to be addressed. So I kind of want to talk today about that bind of this or that, because I am seeing a lot of, my comments and people engaging me, this or that. So a few things today, I guess that would be the theme, is this kind of dichotomous thinking. Mark, don't talk about this, talk about this. Or, boy, Mark, if you only talk about this, people will think you're not talking about that. And I invite you to think bigger with me and think about focus. Think about okay? The first this or that I want to talk about is wet shelter or dry shelter. The lodge as it exists now is a wet shelter, which means that someone can be under the influence or suffering active addiction when they use the shelter. Now, according to the lodge rules, you're not allowed to openly use drugs. There's no drug paraphernalia allowed to be out. There's no dealing on the property. There's no using on the property, that kind of thing. It is against regulations. But someone is not asked or interrogated, are you a drug user? Are you under the influence right now? They're given a warm place to sleep at night and rest their head and find safety during, the dark hours of the day. So there is that. Now, a dry shelter is a shelter that does exactly that. You can't come here if you're under the influence. You can't come here if you use. You can't, if there's any evidence that you are a drug user in any way, if you're high, if you have been high, the door is closed to you. Okay? So that's wet or dry. Now, I want you to imagine with me that St. Stephen now, because I see this all the time, the shelter needs to be dry. So tomorrow, if the shelter went dry, that means almost everyone, as people have said to me, almost everyone in that shelter is suffering substance use disorder. They're a drug user. Therefore, the shelter needs to be closed and only people who are not addicted can use it. Well, that would be a solution for eliminating guests at the shelter. So the door would close. I don't know how many people are not suffering active addiction there, but out of 22 beds, you'd maybe, I don't know, let's say 5 people are in there. Great. So again, the immediate vicinity of the shelter maybe calms down, but what do the other kind of 30 people who use the shelter regularly, who are suffering addiction, what do? They go back, friends, to the situation we've had before. Encampments all over town, breaking and entering to stay in places, destroying public property, looking for places to sleep and stay warm. We've been there. We don't like it. Now, if someone else has a better solution to this problem, I would love to hear it. But I'm going to say, and this is just my educated opinion, talking to addictions and mental health and homelessness experts, when someone is denied entry to a shelter, they're not going to suddenly get clean. We wish that were the case. There's no evidence for that. And because addiction is a healthcare issue, we need to be laying this at the feet of the department that's responsible for it, which is the provincial government, right? And we've seen the cutting of programs more and more. The current Liberal government is adding more detox beds, but we need to get people out of addiction. But I just want to focus on this. I keep asking this question, and I'm frankly, no one can answer it. Tomorrow, no one can answer it in a way that prevents the problem of, if tomorrow it became a dry shelter, where do all the people who are suffering addiction go? Where do they go? They need to find it. Yeah, they can't. That's the problem. And I keep saying this, and if you're not aware of this, it's weeks wait to get into detox, weeks to months, and then it's over a year wait to get into rehab. Okay, so that's the problem with saying the shelter needs to be dry. The shelter does not permit drug use on its premises, but if you shut the shelter to people who are suffering from addiction and substance use disorder, they have nowhere to go, and they're in our backyards again, and they're all over town trying to survive, okay? And that disrupts everyone. So I just want to put that there. That's the first this or that. If you have a way to solve that that's better, that's possible legally, please step forward. Please present it. If you're a candidate and you have a better solution for that, please step forward. Okay, the other thing is bridge housing or structure. So I've heard people say, like Mark talks about bridge housing, 199 Union, whatever it is. People don't just need bridge housing, they need structure. They need a program. They need, and I 100% agree. This is where I like to talk about goals together. This is a dichotomy that is not accurate. Bridge housing, so please refer to episode 48, a video that I made a week ago or so, 48, today's 60 something, 48 videos ago, episode 48. The Canadian Association to End Homelessness' Bridge Housing Manual. Okay, I've made videos on this before. Bridge housing is the structure that you're recommending. Somebody gets their own space. They check into the program. You're not allowed onto the bridge housing property unless you're essentially agreeing as a participant to conduct yourself in a certain way. Now, in our country, we cannot force treatment on anyone. The previous provincial government proposed that and was defeated, right? So we live in a democracy. We can't force anyone to undergo treatment. What we can do is give them a space, give them their own bed, give them a place to sleep and recover from their life of the shelter and being outside unsheltered. They have their own place to secure their belongings. They can lock the door and come and go as they please, checking in and checking out, 24/7 staffing at the front gate, a place to cook, a communal place for education and culinary and services around health issues and addiction. All of that is on site at a Bridge housing place. Visitors need to check in, check out. There's perimeter checks. As your mayor, I want this kind of program and facility in St. Stephen so we can clean up what's happening at the shelter. Now, again, you can say, and I've heard this, and it's a good thinking. Like, what if we had a wet shelter and a dry shelter? Again, a dry shelter is a lesser version of Bridge housing, because shelters are one big room, kind of hostel style with lots of beds. This is why people can't sleep. This is why people are getting bothered, and there's conflicts and emergency services visit a lot. Like, imagine your entire family of 20, your extended family living in a place like that night after night after night. The police would probably be called on your family as well, right? A lot of us can't live that way. We need our own space, our own room, our own place to rest, our own privacy, a door that closes. That's what is being proposed for people who enter the program of Bridge housing. That means a lot of people would move from the shelter into there. It's a next step, and they're on the road to recovering from their life of crisis and recovery from substance abuse. Okay, so again, don't think it's Bridge housing or structure. If you don't understand Bridge housing, I invite you to look at the CAEH and other programs like that of Bridge housing, and watch my video on episode 48 where I really get into the weeds on it. Compassion, the other thing, compassion versus no compassion. I have never called anyone who, doesn't like what's going on at the shelter or wants a dry shelter versus that. I've never said you people lack compassion. Can we take compassion out of the conversation, please? Let's assume we're all compassionate. Let's assume we all treat each other as neighbors. If you say, compassion versus accountability, or people say we're not compassionate, you're saying that. I'm not saying that. I want us to be kind of dispassionate about this as we find the best solution. Data-based, evidence-based solutions. And so don't turn it into a value, and don't beat yourself up, and don't accuse people of saying you don't have any compassion. The best solution to this problem is we need the shelter to house and accommodate people who are suffering from substance use disorder, because ideally those people would be immediately into detox and immediately into rehab, and then immediately find housing that they're not back on the street. But we don't have that right now. But the solution of, again, our municipality so far has been to do nothing, to solve the emergency and then not take the next steps. But this is not about compassion, friend. I'm not saying you don't have compassion, okay? But also, accountability is extremely important. So if the goal is compassion or accountability, absolutely, we need accountability. And that's why, again, the Lodge has rules, sanctions, people get bans, okay? If you don't think that there's rules at the shelter, you're mistaken. And if you don't think there's structure around Bridge housing, you're mistaken. So, and again, that's not your fault. I just invite you to engage in more dialogue and investigate how these programs actually serve the people who need them. Okay, so let's take out the compassion value and just say, hey, practically, this is the best solution. Even if somebody doesn't deserve housing, if we want those folks not to be sleeping all over St. Stephen and acting in a disruptive way and committing crimes, and we all saw it, like people who live downtown, people using drugs in public spaces and setting fires, trying to keep warm at night, and breaking into structures that are abandoned. That kind of thing, believe it or not, has gone down as a result of the shelter. So let's just take out the compassion versus no compassion, or compassion versus accountability. That's just not correct as well. Public safety versus the shelter. These are also not dichotomous, okay? I have said and talked to the BIA in downtown St. Stephen. As mayor, I am extremely interested. I mean, I ran on this as MLA for more police presence, more engagement. 2 days ago, I said we must not accept drug use. We must not accept complacency in allowing illegal activities, okay? So I want a way as your mayor to make the BIA in the downtown and the hot spots safer. And I'm looking at St. John's Community Safety Service. Whether this is volunteer, I wonder if many of us would take shifts and walk around in the hotspots, look for drug paraphernalia, be present, flashlights, walking around, shooing away, documenting drug use, that kind of thing, helping the police. The RCMP used to have an auxiliary police service. A lot of municipalities have an auxiliary police service. Can we do that? Whether it's volunteer, do we want to make the budget for a community safety service with patrols and an actual paid staff on weekends or evenings or place where there's abandonment downtown? That's the kind of solution we need. But it's not public safety or the shelter, because again, shut the shelter down, public safety gets worse, not better. Eliminating the shelter doesn't increase public safety. All the evidence points to that, okay? So it's not this or that in that regard either, okay? Now, I'm at time. So I just want to reiterate, like mayor things, like recreation and parks and a thriving downtown and making our community better. I mean, build up St. Stephen. That's what I want to do. But when it comes to housing, we have to eliminate the homelessness crisis because, as I mentioned a few videos before today, developers are actually saying, we're hesitating to build houses in St. Stephen because your homelessness crisis is so out of control. And they need a guaranteed return on investment when they build here. We have to solve this homelessness crisis, ironically, to get housing here. The solution is the next step. It is bridge housing, okay? Public safety. We need more public safety. So we're going to shut down the shelter and scatter everyone and go back to where we were, a public safety crisis 2 years ago? No. Again, get people out of the shelter into the next step. That will increase public safety. The evidence is clear. I've made videos on that as well, okay? So we've got housing with public safety. Businesses increasing. How are we going to get more people downtown into businesses? Improve activity. How are we going to do that? Homelessness. I talked about the housing loop. A few days ago. How do we solve housing? I just said this really is the issue, friends. And as mayor, I'm not going to just say, oh, this is toxic, this is kryptonite. As a board member in Neighborhood Works, I don't want to be painted as a single issue candidate. If this is the issue, then I am a single issue candidate. It's not the only issue. Housing, public safety, and the really businesses coming to, being attracted to and staying in the downtown, which is a public safety issue, which is more housing, which all really stems from, like anything, if your house is on fire, you focus there. Maybe you need a new roof. But that's not what's at issue right now. There's a fire in the kitchen. We'll get to the roof eventually, right? So that's my take on what's going on here. As your mayor, I would love to be just talking about, the stare at flower pots and potholes or whatever. But right now, I want to show you also that I'm working towards a solution with you, using the best evidence that is out there, and that's what we need to keep this dialogue going. I'm just going to leave you with this. The shelter is as much for us, residents who have homes, as it is for the people who do not have homes, okay? So I know that's hard to believe, but it isn't, because it's an emergency solution that's not working well, but it's as much for us as it is for them, because when you shut down the shelter, those folks are everywhere, and none of us feel safe. None of us feel like our property values are where they should be. None of us feel like we can go and patronize businesses downtown, all that kind of thing. So do you see how they're all interconnected? And I want to talk about these things as mayor in a very constructive, forward-looking, horizon, exciting, build up St. Stephen way. And at the same time, as mayor, I want to solve this problem with your council very aggressively. So explore what other candidates are saying and bringing to the table. I'm super interested in the best solution. And if somebody else has it, that's fantastic. But that's what I want to bring to you today. We got to zoom out and look at this not as a this or that, but as an integrated systems issue. And when we solve one problem, it starts to cascade and our whole community is better. All right? Take care of yourself today, friends. Take care of each other and your neighbor. Let's build up St. Stephen together. BuildUpSt.Stephen.ca, and we'll talk tomorrow.